I hope not. It's official that. Oh yeah. Okay. Here. She does this thing where she starts licking the air when I. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Okay, they shouldn't be this cocky. China has launched a new retaliation in the trade war. North Star Radio. Ethan Klein threatens to sue Noah Samson despite freedom of speech. Ethan Klein, a lawsuit happy millionaire, has become the man he once feared. I'm not a legal expert. This is not legal advice. Chris gave Waltz a softball on Gaza and he whiffed it.
All right. In 2017, Ethan and Neela Klein helped set a precedent for fair.
Skip. Damn, y'all don't even want to fucking hear anything about Ethan Klein. That's crazy. That's not that crazy. It's perfectly understandable. Oh, I was gonna watch this. We can't afford groceries yet. Billionaire wealth is exploding.
Welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion.
From Cold
Take
Fusion.
a look at this picture. It features prominent tech individuals like Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Google's CEO Sundar Pichai, and Tesla's Elon Musk. As of recording this video, the combined net worth of these four people is over $700 billion. In fact, Mark, Jeff, and Elon are centibillionaires. Of course, the recent stock market dip may have wiped off some of their wealth, but these billionaires can still sleep easy enough at night. People with dozen-digit fortunes didn't exist 8 years ago. But now, according to the Forbes 2025 billionaire list, a record 15 people are on that list. And that's up from...
Tell NSR you love him still. No, he's great. I just, I understand why no one wants to watch anything with Ethan Klein's face on it for any period of time.
In 2023. When Forbes first made this list in 1987, they had to scrape to find individuals worth more than 28 billion, adjusted for inflation. And all they could find were just 2 Japanese tycoons. And now today, that 28 billion amount isn't even enough to land you in the top 50 of that list. The trend is as clear as day. There's no stopping these billionaires. In 2024 alone, billionaire wealth surged by $2 trillion. That's at a rate 3 times faster than the entire global economy. And for the first time in history, the richest Americans now pay less tax than the working class. Something is clearly wrong. But what? It's not a question of why there's such inequality, but more a question of how this is all happening. Why are families struggling to buy cartons of eggs, while billionaires seem to keep adding to their wealth with absolute ease? What happens to the world economy if this trend keeps on going? Does the middle class cease to exist? And what can we do to fix all of this and not repeat the same mistakes? Let's take a look.
You are watching Cold Fusion TV.
Clip channels, do not upload my reaction to this video. It just came out. I don't want to kick it in the algorithm. And I hope this channel, if you do upload my reaction, will take you down with a copyright strike.
The world's richest people are just getting richer, and even faster than expected. Oxfam's annual inequality report says 5 people are now on track to reach trillionaire status within the next decade. Elon Musk is first in line, followed by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Oracle's Larry Ellison, Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, and LVMH's Bernard Arnault.
Whenever numbers like millions, billions, and trillions are discussed, it's often difficult to put the vast difference between them into context. So let's start there. If you, yes you watching, made $1 every second, you'd be a millionaire in 12 days. That's under 2 weeks. But how long would it take to reach $1 billion? 6 months? A year? Well, at a rate of $1 per second, every day, non-stop, you'd need over 31 years. And that's just for 1 billion. As we know, the world's richest have not just 1 billion, but tens, even hundreds of billions. And their wealth just keeps growing. For example, in 2024, their combined wealth skyrocketed from 13 trillion to 15 trillion in just 12 months. And the richest 10 men saw their fortunes grow by an average of 100 million per day. That's more than what entire villages or towns in some parts of the world will earn in a lifetime, every single day. And these guys, the billionaires, have been absolute vacuum cleaners of wealth over the past few decades. The top 1%.
You see, they deserve it. Okay? they're just smarter and harder. They're working smarter, they're working harder, and that's why they deserve it. There's nothing wrong here. There's nothing wrong with the way that the structure has been designed, okay? They are jobs creators. They are jobs providers, and they do it in a magnanimous fashion. That's why they do it.
Alone has captured 38% of all new wealth created since 1995. And this is at the same time where the poorest half of the world's population, which is around 3.8 billion people, owns just 2% of global wealth. Think about that for a second. No matter how you look at it, these stats are staggering. The ultra-rich are clearly pulling further ahead, while half the world is effectively locked out of wealth. And it goes further. It's not just numbers on paper. This kind of money can warp economies, influence politics, and shape the world in ways that we can barely comprehend.
You don't see it much on TV. You don't hear it talked about here at all. But the American people do not believe that it is appropriate that 3 people, 1, 2, 3, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, and Mr. Zuckerberg, 3 Americans own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million people.
And that's not a useless fact either. Massive wealth inequality usually comes before internal conflict, or more accurately, it's a symptom of a deeper problem.
When the government has problems funding itself, when there are bad economic conditions, and living standards for most people are declining, and there are large wealth, values, and political gaps, internal conflict between the rich and the poor, as well as different ethnic, religious, and racial groups, greatly increases. This leads to political extremism that shows up as populism of the left or the right. Those of the left seek to redistribute the wealth, while those of the right seek to maintain the wealth.
Yeah, really fucking scary stuff that those on the extremist left are choosing to do. Yeah, that's Ray Dalio, a billionaire with a net worth of $14 billion. Of course, from where he's standing, that unironically is a scary proposition from the extremists on the left.
Wealth in the hands of the rich.
Ray Dalio, a billionaire investor and economic historian, puts it this way, quote, "I've studied the last 500 years of history and cycles, and these things repeat over and over again. Large wealth gaps with large value gaps at the same time, as there's a lot of debt and there's an economic downturn produces conflict and vulnerability. One of the biggest impacts the rising wealth gap has had is the shrinking middle class. The middle class is one of the hallmarks of a healthy economy, so when they shrink and start to falter, it's a symptom of a wider."
Dude, there's nothing funnier than capitalists trying to mystify a basic class dynamic of what your relations are to the means of production, whether you are an owner or whether you're simply a wage laborer, by creating numerous other metrics, right? Middle class, upper middle class, the working poor, all this stuff, and then still failing by their own new design because it is an endless well of greed dominated by parasitic capital owners. So they just go, oh, well, we made up this new metric called the middle class. Okay. And this is a really valuable metric. Oh, fuck. The middle class is gone. It perished. What do we do? It's like, bro, you made the system. You created this new dynamic. And now you're fucking it up even from the new metric that you yourself cultivated. Perhaps there's something fundamentally flawed with everything that's going on. I don't know.
Problem. It's been a slow process, but we all know deep down that something is going wrong. If you think back to the TV shows of the 80s and the 90s, it wasn't uncommon to find characters that lived comfortably on just a single wage. Life was portrayed as financially—
Dude, I saw a tweet about this the other day. It's like, cost of living was so good, people thought you were gay when you had roommates. Like, you had to... you had to keep telling people you're not gay. Like, nowadays, that's like something that Zoomers don't even understand, okay? Like, in the 80s and 90s, if you were a male, if you were an adult male and you had a roommate, people were like, oh, you're gay, and you're like secretly hiding it. You know what I mean? Now it's not even a thing. Like, people look at you funny if you don't have fucking roommates.
Easy, and that's because relatively, it really was. But then things started to go wrong. When you really think about how the economy has been, since I left high school in the late 2000s, the middle class just couldn't catch a break. In 2008, there was the housing crisis, which turned into an international global financial crisis. Europe got a second wind of that disaster around 2011. In most of the Western world, the average Joe was hit by an economic bomb. Small businesses closed, jobs were lost, and households were struggling. Over the next decade, growth was permanently slower than before because the real economy had died, and I've covered that in detail in a previous video. But other than that, people...
Why? Why do you do this? She drank water instantly. As soon as she drinks water, she beelines it to me and then slobbers all over me. She's like, hello, Dad. Look at what I did. Do you like the painting that I drew with the slobber from my mouth? No, I did not like the painting. No. Oh, my God. Here we go. What's up? What's up? You want to get up here? Is it time again? It's time to run the show. It's streamer. It's okay. Calm down. Jesus Christ. Oh. Okay. Here, you got it. You got. Oh fuck. Oh. Look at this. Look at this fucking situation. Look at this. God, she is so big. Oh God. Hello. Oh. Is she still growing? I don't know. I hope not. It's official that... Oh, yeah. Okay, here. She does this thing where she starts licking the air when I rub her back. It's so funny. Like, uncontrollably. Oh. I don't know why she does this. What you want? It's fine. I got you. You're not going to fall. She makes you look small. I am small in comparison to chat. She is 110 plus pounds at this point.
People were still getting by, but then came COVID. The government response shuttered entire economies, leaving everyday people straining themselves just to get by. And there's a famous saying, question, what words do you never want to hear? Answer, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And this joke played out in real time when governments turned on the money printers to counteract their shutdown policies. They thought they were helping, but the result was yet another disaster. Now, today, we're left with rising inflation, stagnant wages, and soaring living costs. And the pressure is only getting worse. The middle 40% of the global population owns just 22% of global wealth. But at the top end of town, it's exactly the opposite. Making money seems easier than ever before. As it turns out, all that government printing helped the stock market, which helped the billionaires. But we'll get to that in a bit. As the saying goes, wealth begets more wealth. So this acceleration will continue. But before we get into the weeds, we need to back up a little bit. How are these guys getting so rich? How does one even become a billionaire?
Hi.
Is it ethical to be a billionaire? Well, that depends on your political leanings. But some individuals do indeed have a rag to riches story. But the pleasantries start and end there. A growing number of billionaires tend to come through one of three routes: monopolies, inheritance, and corruption. According to Forbes, the most common way to become a billionaire is through finance. In fact, Nearly 1 in 6 billionaires, or just over 15%, made their money in finance and investments. The second most common way is technology at 12%, and the third, manufacturing, also at 12%. But it's not just by hard work and innovation. Billionaires don't play by the same rules as the rest of us. And in this section, we'll cover the 3 ways that this is the case. Number 1, inheritance. In 2023, more new billionaires inherited their wealth than built it. Every single billionaire under 30 was born rich. The problem is, in a lot of cases, depending on where you are, there's no tax on this kind of wealth transfer. While the average person works decades to build financial security, billionaire families pass down fortunes tax-free, and they keep their wealth locked up in an exclusive family club. Number 2, corruption and loopholes. Many argue that the financial system is designed to protect the wealthy. Just look at the 2008 financial crisis. Banks made reckless bets, crashed the economy, and then got bailed out with billions in taxpayer dollars. It's capitalized the profits and socialized the losses. Meanwhile, millions of people lost their homes, jobs, and savings. And it's not just banks. The very top % of earners avoid taxes like a plague. They stash money in offshore accounts or borrow against their assets instead of selling them. And this means that they don't have taxable income. If I told you that in the US, for example, the richest 25 people in the country paid an effective tax rate of 3.4%, you'd cry foul. Why should the average person be taxed at 6 times more when they earn a tiny, infinitesimal fraction of what the billionaires earn? Well, although unfair, it's perfectly legal, and it's a bit of a rabbit hole. But hear me out. This is called the buy, borrow, die technique. Edward McCaffrey, the scholar who coined the term buy, borrow, die, says that this technique is being abused so much that it, quote, has basically killed the entire concept of an income tax for the wealthiest individuals, end quote. But he goes on to add that it's, quote, the most important tax avoidance strategy today, end quote. So here's how it goes. Instead of working a 9-to-5 wage and then getting taxed like a pleb, the best way to earn wealth is through accumulating appreciating paper assets like stocks. The wealth isn't taxed until these stocks are sold. Yes, a tariff surprise or another stock market shock may make the wealthy sweat a little bit, but overall, in the big picture, over the past few decades, you'd be doing well. And the next step, borrow.
No.
Since there are no taxes for loans, the genius part of this is that the wealthy simply just borrow against their existing assets to buy more things.
I swear to God, I have a cat, dude. I actually have a cat. What are you looking at? She'll come over and just like rub on my leg. The Herman Miller chair is a recommended limit of 300 pounds. Want to be careful holding the dog on that chair. Not sure how much Kaya weighs. Oh yeah, no, we definitely go way over the fucking legal limit on this bad boy when Kaya's on top of me. Because I'm 230 pounds and she is 110. So I think, yes, we go way over it.
Take Larry Ellison of Oracle, for example. He built a $270 million yacht.
Oh, he deserves it. He needs it, dude. Dude, you guys don't understand. He fucking needs it. Also, jobs provider, thank you. There's a lot of people that work in the yachting sector.
$80 million mansion, and even bought an island worth $30 million, all from borrowing against $30 billion of Oracle stock as collateral. But I know what you're thinking. You can't just keep doing this. These loans have to be paid off at some time.
Yeah, you can, actually, as a matter of fact.
And when they do, these guys are going to have to sell their assets. Well, that's not exactly true. And this is the third part, die. All these guys have to do is just pay off the interest on the loans until they die. If you're dead, you can't.
Which is kind of like a tax when you think about it, except you're just basically paying it back. It's much lower, and you're paying it back to the bank, as opposed to the government.
Can't be taxed now, can you? Furthermore, when an individual dies, the value that their assets gained during their lifetime is exempt from tax.
Yeah.
Their children can then use these gains to pay off the loans. Technically, there's supposed to be a tax on inheritance, but that's no issue for top tax agents. Trust accounts and other arrangements essentially eliminate any tax that has to be paid. This technique is cunning, smart, and hidden away from the average person. And number 3, monopoly power. Monopolies account for nearly 18% of billionaire wealth. When a single company dominates an industry, it crushes.
Don't the billionaires like loan money to the banks? No, every bank loves the fact that billionaires will put their assets as collateral. And because they have virtually unlimited assets, that no matter what happens, it's very, very difficult for a billionaire to lose significant parts of their wealth in the stock market, and therefore have a very hard time paying back that debt. So everybody knows that their money is good. Because in the case where like, let's say there was some sort of fear, right? Or they couldn't pay their debt back to the bank could just seize their assets. But that rarely ever happens.
Competition sets prices and dictates wages. Back in the original Gilded Age of the late 1800s, industrial giants controlled steel, oil, and banking. Today, tech giants control global commerce, information, and infrastructure. Amazon controls over 80% of online purchases in major European markets. Google owns 90% of the search engine market. Meta, formerly Facebook, owns 4 of the top 5 most used social media platforms. It's present in other industries too. In Nigeria, Aliko Dangote has a near monopoly on cement. This gives him massive economic and political power across Africa. Gata Madani's conglomerate, the Adani Group, has faced accusations of crony capitalism and monopolistic behaviour, particularly in sectors like ports and energy. But monopolies aren't just about wealth, they're about control. They can even influence government policies. Even though the United States has checks and balances in place to avoid these exact scenarios, it seems like the loopholes are just as accessible. With all of these factors combined, we're looking at billionaire wealth increasing at an unprecedented rate. It's actually not just increasing, it's accelerating. Last year, Oxfam predicted that we'd see the worst first trillionaire within a decade. Now we're on track to have that in 5 years or sooner. But some people, believe it or not, think that this is actually a good thing. They believe that if there's more billionaires, that means that economies are indeed doing well, and it means that there are opportunities to make massive money. And while it's true that wealthy economies tend to create super rich individuals,
we are a psychotic, suicidal system. And anyone that thinks this is good and not a dire situation is utterly delusional due to dogmatic thinking.
if you look at the GDP
Capitalist dogma is what I like to call peasant brain.
per capita and compare it to the number of billionaires, there's no real correlation. For example, India, Mexico, and Brazil have far more billionaires than Sweden or Switzerland, despite the fact that these 2 European countries have a higher GDP per capita. So what does that mean? It means that in most countries, a handful of ultra-rich individuals control a massive share of the nation's wealth, while the majority of people struggle to get by. Now we have to talk about the financial situations that have allowed billionaires to grow so rapidly very recently. Pumping more money into an economy doesn't automatically create more wealth for the broader society. Leaving aside the inflation risk, there's something else at play.
It's so funny because we talk about oligarchs, people that take advantage of, we talk about like oligarchs in foreign nations, people who take advantage of like the corrupt political system in foreign nations. And yet our top billionaires, for the most part, are also doing the exact same shit through a system of subsidies, like the Walton family, which you see skyrocket into
More money.
Skyrocket into wealth over here. Like, how the fuck do you think the Walton family has made their money, has generated their net worth? They rely on both subsidies on the front end for Walmart, and then also a secondary set of subsidies in the form of SNAP benefits without ever having to pay their workers an honest wage. And then those SNAP benefits get used by their own workers inside of Walmart.
Into an economy doesn't automatically create more wealth for the broader society. Leaving
Same with Elon Musk.
aside the inflation risk, there's something else at play. The Cantillon effect. The term comes from Richard Cantillon, an 18th century economist. He noticed that when new money enters an economy, it doesn't spread out evenly through society.
So we should cut off subsidies? No, I don't have an issue with subsidies. We should just make it a command economy. Instead of cutting subsidies, you say, hey, all of your billions, they mean nothing. We are the state. We made you generate those billions. And when push comes to shove, when it's time to demand more money for American prosperity, okay, you will give back.
Instead, it benefits those who get access to the money first. The wealthy and big corporations have first access to new money. They get it through government contracts, central bank policies, and financial institutions. They then use it to buy stocks, real estate, and businesses before inflation kicks in. But for regular people who get their money later, they see higher prices before their wages or savings have a chance to catch up. Think of it like pouring water from a glass onto the top of a very large sponge. The water soaks the top first, but by the time it reaches the bottom, it's soaked through and there's only just a few drops left. And of course, this leads us back to what we talked about earlier. When governments pumped millions upon millions of dollars through the economy through the mechanism of stimulus checks, unemployment benefits, and business relief programs, it put cash into people's pockets, which at first seemed great. But then what happened next? Prices skyrocketed, especially, once again, the prices of assets. Housing and stocks went on an absolute tear, and guess who's most likely to own these assets? The wealthy. They already had their real estate and their stocks, so they were happy to see the values soar. Meanwhile, everyday people saw their buying power shrink due to inflation. Once the stimulus money ran out, people were back to where they started, except now, everything was more expensive. And this is why the rich get richer during times of economic expansion. And it's the same reason why the working class struggles to keep up with rising costs. So it really is more money, more problems. And there's some other side effects when new money enters into an economy. Whenever a country's government pumps in more money, it supercharges the stock market. Well, this is not universal, but it's mostly true in the context of modern capitalist economies. And the claim is backed up by this chart, which is adapted from the financial analyst Lynn Alden's research in her book, Broken Money. It shows the super tight correlation between the S&P 500 and government liquidity injections. In simple words, this chart demonstrates that the more money that the Fed and the US Treasury pump into an economy, the higher the stock prices soar. These are all publicly traded stocks, so it must be good for all investors at least. But the problem lies elsewhere. In 2022, the wealthiest 10% possessed, get this, 93% of all stock market equity. That means that when the government floods the economy with money, it primarily benefits those who already have their wealth invested in assets like stocks. For the ultra-rich, it's all their Christmases at once. Meanwhile, for everyone else, enjoy higher rent and struggling to buy eggs. If you think that sounds unfair, you're not alone. Gary Stevenson, a former financial trader, economist, and YouTuber who graduated from the London School of Economics, explains perfectly.
Money is not food. Money is not energy. Money is not housing. Money is not healthcare, okay? If we give everybody money, we have not increased the amount of actual resources and assets we have in our society, okay? So you don't make society richer by giving people money. You make society richer by creating and having more resources and assets. So if I give everybody more money, all that happens is the prices go up. But if I give you a bit of money and him a lot of money, then he gets richer and you get poorer because you have a bit more money, but the prices have gone up relative to both of your increases in money. So I think this is the thing I want, and the reason I'm hammering this down is because they did that in COVID and they got away with it. And to be honest, the Conservative government lucked out with the Ukraine war because that took the entire blame for the inflation, which in my opinion was caused by their massive increase in inequality.
I mean, what can be done? Well, what the fuck? Yeah, the way to do it is by taking money out of the top, which you do through taxes, progressive taxation.
Stevenson's words drive home a truth. Simply handing out money isn't going to bridge the wealth gap. It's a much deeper structural problem. And as time progresses, people are becoming more and more frustrated about it. People are pushing back. Their bitterness is spilling over online and in the streets. All of this isn't just noise. People are actually demanding real change.
My husband's making the most money he's ever made, and this is the brokest we've ever been. Make it make sense. We try to live within our means, we truly do. It's like no matter how much you don't go out to eat, no matter how much you don't spend money, you're still gonna be broke. Why? Because that is the world that we live in.
That, you know, she is now working 3 jobs just to survive. I had another gentleman who had mentioned that he's now living paycheck to paycheck at a job that he's been at for 30 years, and he's a single father.
Most of the stimulus went to the rich, so this framing is kind of misleading. No, I don't think it's that misleading, especially because he also paired that up with what Gary's Economics was saying, which is that you get $1, but the rich in the process get $10, everything's like the price increases eat away at your purchasing power, and that's not even a dent for the wealthy, whereas it ruins your finances. In the era of corporate consolidation, of course, it also makes it much easier to engage in price leadership, not price fixing, that's illegal, but price leadership, very legal and very cool. Corporate consolidation makes it so easy to engage in price leadership as opposed to price fixing, which would be an oligopoly or a monopoly, and we would never allow that to happen. Price leadership, on the other hand, very cool, and it's just normal market forces. You know, you're just following another company that has decided to engage in some kind of spending cuts or reduce the supply as without letting you figure it out. Maybe a couple less chips in the bag.
And he's never felt the pinch like he's doing now. They are now using their credit cards just to pay some of their bills to survive.
So what can be done? Now, in theory, a wealthier society should mean better lives for everyone, better schools, better healthcare, and better infrastructure. But if we do compare today to any time in history up until parts of the 20th century, life is indeed still better. Children don't die of curable illnesses. Most of us have a smartphone, electricity, and clean water. But the time we're in now feels especially painful because living standards are moving backwards, and now it's at an accelerated rate. Governments can start with progressively taxing the ultra-rich. The idea is that a chunk of their income can go into funding things like schools and healthcare. A problem with taxing the rich, though, is that they could just leave the country if the laws become too strict, so it is still a balance. Speaking of having a balance, here's Milton Friedman on why 100% inheritance tax is a bad idea, for example.
And given that the kind of people who become successful capitalists do not become that way by giving away their wealth voluntarily, isn't it necessary to forcibly redistribute wealth before you can begin to operate under a capitalist system?
No, it is not. What is the effect of 100% inheritance tax? The percent of 100% inheritance tax is to encourage people to dissipate their wealth in high living.
What's the harm in that?
The harm in that is that where do you get the factories? Where do you get the machines? Where do you get the capital investment? Where do you get the incentive to improve technology?
We do forget that the rich, definitely not all of them, but at least some of them invest in companies, and this does help the economy. I guess the difference between now and when this was filmed is that companies today tend to be focused more on extracting money at all costs.
No, that's not a difference. That was the dream that he envisioned, and we're living in it. All of this is a normal byproduct of capitalism. It's just working as intended. It's not capitalism that is this isn't necessarily a failure of capitalism. It's just the intention of capitalism. It's not a bug, it's the future, exactly.
More often than not, rather than creating better products for the consumers. But that's a story for another day. And then there's the financial sector, which is where I think most of the work can be done. Authorities should look at tightening loopholes. Allowing companies to buy back their own stock was an absolute disaster, both for the quality of our companies and for wealth inequality. Companies being able to buy their own stock and push up the price sounds like fraud, but it's legal. Economist Lenore Palladino puts it this way.
It used to be illegal.
Buyback programs are, quote, one of the drivers of our imbalanced economy, in which corporate profits and shareholder payments continue to grow, while wages...
It used to literally be illegal. It was considered to be fraud for understandable reasons. Ronald Reagan put a stop to that, of course. Thank God. The endless bounty of Reagan.
For typical workers stay flat. And then, of course, we have offshore tax havens, creative accounting practices, or questionable capital gains exemptions. Closing these loopholes could help the wealthiest contribute their fair share, at least more than 3.4% in tax. Of course, there's the argument that it's their hard-earned money. Why should they give it back? But this isn't about punishing success. It's about making sure the system doesn't keep reinforcing advantages for those already at the top. Closing tax loopholes shouldn't be that controversial. And yes, governments do squander tax revenues like a fat kid in a candy store, but at least there's a potential for a fairer tax system to help those who need it most without inflation. These solutions would be about building a society where success doesn't come at the expense of everyone else. It's about creating opportunities for everyone, not just protecting the privileges of a few. There's also proposals of raising the minimum wage. If multiple countries in the West do have a working poor class, that is, they have full-time jobs but still live in their cars, something is clearly wrong. But then again, on the flip side, many argue that raising the minimum wage could lead to job losses or increased costs for small businesses, and ultimately even end up being inflationary. These solutions are hard, they're nuanced, and they'll take time, competent leadership, and a lot of thought to get right. But there's no getting around it. If we want to avoid mass riots and social disruption in 10 years, ultimately, something has to be done if we're to lessen the gap. Here's Gary again.
Chancellor now, there'd be very, very little I could do. Honestly, because if I come out and try and tax the richest, I will get attacked by all of the richest and most powerful people in this country, in the world, will attack me. The newspapers will attack me, everyone will attack me, and it will become extremely difficult. And unless the general public, your average British man or woman on the street, understands we need to deal with...
Thank God I live in Australia. Y'all are plebs in America. Australia is literally following the same exact fucking steps of America in terms of neoliberal capitalism. Australia also is doubly cooked by, one, being a colonial vestige still under the firm control of the Commonwealth, and also simultaneously, it is basically a launching pad for American empire in the region. So the idea that like Australia is doing all right is the funniest cope of all time. It's not. I wish it was. I love Australia. Obviously, as you guys know, it has produced some of the funniest Maoists. Some of the funniest third worldists have come out of Australia. I don't know why, as we were talking about before. But while we aren't under the firm control of the Commonwealth, that's what you think, dude. Wait till you piss off the king. The grip of the Commonwealth is still very much alive in Australia. Just you wait. Almost been a year since Aussie land. I know, I miss it. But it's way past the point now where the Aussies are going to come to me instead.
With inequality, to protect our living standards, to protect our homes, to protect our children, it will be impossible.
So the demand needs to be bottom up.
Listen, this is not achievable without the support of the public. This is not achievable without the support of the public, without the broad support of the public.
These are not one-size-fits-all solutions. The economic situation and overall state of your country can be extremely different depending on where you are. Not every place has the same problem. What works in the US might flop in India or vice versa. The fact of the matter is, billionaire wealth buys political influences to tip the scales in their favor, and it's an uphill battle, but we have to start somewhere. And even if we are just discussing solutions in broader strokes, it's a start. So what do you guys think about all of this? It is a strange time to live in, but I'd like to hear what some of your solutions could be. Maybe we can get a conversation going in the comment section below. To kick off the discussion, over on the Cold Fusion Instagram, there was a post in reference to this video. Under it, there were some interesting comments in response. One user expresses a common viewpoint. If a billionaire creates jobs for countless people, then what's wrong with that? The main problem is hoarding wealth and not really contributing to society. I guess that ties into what we've learned from this episode. A lot of the ultra wealthy don't make most of their money from industry, but investments, especially the stock market, and taking...
What compels someone to still maintain their belief in this process? I don't know. I genuinely don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. A billionaire without workers is nothing. There is no wealth generation. There's no value generation at all. By your logic, wait, Tim Pool met with Netanyahu. Holy shit. What a get for Israel. Great to use that Israeli haters take foreign funding line. How did he think this would look? I guess I kind of believe him about the Russia stuff now. He could have been too fucking stupid to know. Felix is... Lately, he's just been so late to the game. I don't know why. He's just like finding out about things a couple days after they pop off. I think he's too busy playing Cyberpunk, maybe.
use.
Oops, wrong video.
Taking out loans against those investments as collateral. But do you agree with that? Billionaires are fine as long as they create jobs and contribute to society. Feel free to discuss. The Trump tariffs gave the world whiplash. Stock markets plunged, vaulted higher, and then plunged again. But in the chaos, some people made money.
It's not just a company, it's actually an individual.
He made so much money.
He made 900 million.
And this has caused accusations of insider trading. But if you wanted to know more about this news story, it's such a politically charged topic that it makes things hard. How would you get the viewpoints of both sides? Well, today's sponsor, Ground News, is doing just that.
Okay, well, another Ground News ad. All right, well, that was good. That was cool. Good video. People want to cling to selfish notions about a libertarian notion that they could be moral, a wealthy person who can enjoy the wealth and not work. White people in America refuse to let this idea go and feel enlightened to it. That's all I got for today. I'm tired. But, uh-oh, someone woke up. What are you looking at? Huh? What are you looking at? What are you looking at? Oh, here we go.